The House of Representatives votes today to end the 4-day partial government shutdown. The Senate already passed the deal 71-29 on Friday night. That's overwhelming bipartisan support, with only 29 senators voting no if the House passes it this afternoon, which now looks likely. The government reopens tonight. This is breaking because just hours ago, Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters he expects passage today after delaying Monday's planned vote. President Trump publicly endorsed the deal despite it only giving Homeland Security a 2-week funding extension instead of the full year he wanted, and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries called the compromise a meaningful step in the right direction, signaling Democrats will provide votes if needed. But here's the critical detail most coverage is missing. This doesn't actually solve the shutdown crisis, it just delays it. The deal only funds DHES through February 13th, that's 10 days from now. Congress still has to negotiate immigration enforcement reforms after ICE killed 2 Americans in Minneapolis, or we're right back to shutdown threats in less than 2 weeks. We've been tracking every vote, every negotiation, and every deadline since. This shutdown began Saturday morning. This is the complete breakdown of the Senate's 71-29 vote, today's House vote, and the ticking clock to the next funding deadline, coverage you won't get from cable news obsessing over partisan spin instead of actual vote counts. This is Strategic Signal Report. I'm Sarah Mitchell. Tonight we're breaking down the Senate's overwhelming 71-29 passage, why the House vote was delayed from Monday to today, and what happens after the government reopens, because the February 13th DHES deadline is already looming. By the end, you'll understand exactly how we got here and why this fight isn't over. Let's break down the votes, the timeline, and the next shutdown threat. Let me walk you through what happened Friday night that set all of this in motion. After the Senate's failed 45-55 vote Thursday afternoon and Lindsey Graham's objection Thursday night that killed the first compromise, Senate leaders went back to work Friday morning. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and President Trump's negotiating team refined the deal, addressed Graham's concerns about the phone records provision, and brought a clean package to the floor Friday afternoon. The vote was called around p.m. Eastern on Friday, January 30th. According to Senate Gov's official roll call vote number 20. The final tally was 71 senators voting yes, 29 voting no. That's a massive bipartisan majority, 11 votes more than the 60 needed to overcome a filibuster. Here's the breakdown. All 47 Democrats and independents voted yes. That's Schumer's entire caucus unified in support after getting what they demanded, splitting DHES funding away from the other agencies on the Republican side. 24 Republicans joined Democrats to vote yes. Only 29 Republicans voted no, the hardline conservatives who oppose any compromise on immigration enforcement. Those 29 no votes included Senator Rand Paul, who votes against virtually all spending bills on principle, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, and Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri are the usual suspects who position themselves as the most conservative members of the caucus. But critically, Lindsey Graham voted yes this time. His objection from Thursday was resolved, and he supported the final package. The deal itself is straightforward. It funds 5 major agencies through September 30th, the end of the fiscal year: Defense, Health and Human Services, Labor, Transportation, and the State Department. That's over $1 trillion in appropriations, accounting for the vast majority of the government. But the Department of Homeland Security gets something very different: a continuing resolution funding it at current levels for just 2 weeks, through February 13th. This split was the entire point of the negotiations. Democrats refused to give DHES full-year funding after ICE killed Renee Good on January 7th and Alex Preddy on January 24th during enforcement operations in Minneapolis. 2 American citizens are dead in less than 3 weeks. Democrats demanded time to negotiate reforms to ICE's rules of engagement, body camera requirements, and civilian oversight before committing to full-year funding. Republicans initially resisted but ultimately accepted the compromise because the alternative was keeping the entire government shut down indefinitely. Trump himself endorsed it publicly, posting on Truth Social that Republicans and Democrats had come together to fund the vast majority of government while providing an extension for Homeland Security. So Friday night, 71-29, the Senate passed it. But here's the problem: the House was on recess. They couldn't vote. The bill sat waiting for the House to return, and at midnight Saturday morning, funding expired. The government shut down. Let's be clear about what shut down and what didn't, because this was a partial shutdown. Not a full one. Agencies funded by the failed package, Homeland Security, State Department, and Transportation, went into shutdown mode. According to DHES contingency plans, 167,000 essential employees kept working without paychecks. Border Patrol agents, ICE officers, TSA screeners, Coast Guard personnel, Secret Service agents all required to work, none getting paid until the shutdown ends. Another 43,000 DHES employees were furloughed immediately, sent home without pay, State Department visa and passport processing slowed to emergency-only services. Some transportation department functions paused, though FAA air traffic controllers stayed on duty as essential personnel. But Social Security checks still went out. Medicare continued. The military stayed fully operational. Those were funded under different appropriations bills passed earlier, so they weren't affected. The shutdown began Saturday, January 31st at 12:01 a.m. Eastern. It's now Tuesday, February 3rd, 4 full days without funding for major agencies. For days where 167,000 federal workers showed up to enforce immigration laws, secure airports, and protect diplomatic facilities without knowing when their next paycheck would arrive. Why did it take 4 days to resolve? Because the House was on recess through Monday. They physically couldn't vote over the weekend. When they returned on Monday, Speaker Johnson initially scheduled a vote for Monday evening. But by Monday afternoon, he delayed it to Tuesday. According to reporting from NBC News and CNN, the delay happened because House Democrats signaled they wouldn't provide votes to waive certain procedural hurdles that would have allowed the bill to pass on Monday without going through the full Rules Committee process. Johnson needed the extra day to get the Rules Committee to formally approve the bill, which they did Monday night by a vote of 8-4. So now we're at Tuesday, February 3rd. The House is in session, the bill has been through Rules Committee, and the floor vote happens today. Here's how this works procedurally. First, the House votes on what's called the rule, essentially the terms of debate for the bill. This requires a simple majority. If the rule passes, then the House votes on the actual bill itself, which also requires a simple majority. Republicans control the House with a narrow majority to 2-0 Republicans, 215 Democrats as of the start of this Congress. That means Johnson can only afford to lose a handful of Republican votes if Democrats vote as a bloc against him. But that's not happening here, according to multiple reports from NBC News and ABC News. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, told reporters Monday that the 2-week DHES continuing resolution represents a meaningful step in the right direction. That's Democrat speak for "we'll vote for this." Trump also publicly backed the deal, which locks in Republican support. CNN reported that key House conservatives who initially grumbled about the compromise, members of the Freedom Caucus, bowed to Trump's endorsement and agreed to support it. So the math works. The rule vote likely passes with bipartisan support. Then the bill itself passes with strong bipartisan support, probably something like 300 to 130 or better. And once the House passes it, the bill goes to President Trump's desk for his signature. Trump will sign it immediately, as he already endorsed it publicly, and according to Office of Management and Budget Guidance from OMEM Director Russ Vaught's memo on Friday, agencies have been preparing to reopen quickly once funding is restored. That means by tonight, late Tuesday evening, federal workers get called back, paychecks get processed, and normal operations resume. The shutdown ends today. Now here's the part that matters for the next 2 weeks. This bill only funds DHES through February 13th. That's next Thursday, 10 days from now. Congress has 10 days to negotiate comprehensive immigration enforcement reforms, or we're right back to shutdown threats. What are Democrats demanding? Based on public statements from Schumer, Cortez Masto, and other key senators, they want mandatory body cameras for ICE agents during enforcement operations. They want civilian oversight boards with authority to investigate shootings and use of force incidents. They want restricted rules of engagement that prevent agents from using lethal force except in clearly defined circumstances. And they want accountability for the Minneapolis killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. What are Republicans willing to give? That's unclear. Trump has said publicly he supports ICE and law enforcement, but he also agreed to this 2-week extension, which suggests he's willing to negotiate. Some Republicans, particularly those from swing districts, privately told reporters they support reforms after the Minneapolis shootings made headlines. But hardline conservatives, the 29 senators who voted no on Friday and their counterparts in the House, they're not giving an inch. They see any restrictions on ICE as weakening immigration enforcement, which is Trump's signature policy. So we have 10 days for these two sides to find common ground. If they do, DHES gets funded through September and this fight is over. If they don't, funding expires February 13th at midnight, and Homeland Security shuts down again, this time without state, defense, or the other agencies shutting down with it, because those are already funded through September. So here's the timeline for the rest of today. The House convenes this afternoon. The exact timing of the vote isn't publicly confirmed yet, but based on typical House scheduling, expect the rule vote around 3 or p.m. Eastern, followed by the bill vote around 5 or p.m. If it passes, which it almost certainly will given Trump's endorsement and Jeffries' support, the bill goes to the White House. Trump signs it within hours. OMEM sends guidance to agencies to resume operations. By tonight, the shutdown officially ends. Tomorrow morning, federal workers return to their offices. Paychecks get processed. For back pay covering the 4 shutdown days, visa and passport processing resumes. Everything goes back to normal, except it's not normal, because everyone knows we're doing this again in 10 days. The House votes today on the Senate's 71-29 deal to end the 4-day shutdown. It will almost certainly pass. The government reopens tonight. But the question now, can Congress negotiate ICE reforms in 10 days? Will Democrats accept anything less than comprehensive oversight? Will Republicans give an inch on restricting enforcement tactics? And if they can't agree by February 13th, does DHES shut down alone while the rest of the government stays open? This isn't the end of the shutdown crisis, it's intermission. The real fight starts tomorrow and ends February 13th at midnight. What do you think happens? Can Congress find a compromise in 10 days, or are we headed for another shutdown over immigration enforcement? Drop your prediction in the comments and subscribe to Strategic Signal Report for coverage of the February 13th deadline. We'll be tracking every negotiation, every statement, and every vote as Congress races to avoid the next shutdown. For Strategic Signal Report, I'm Sarah Mitchell. The House votes this afternoon. We'll see you in the next briefing.